और मेरा ये मानना है कि बीजेपी एक गुंडों की पार्टी है, अनपढ़ गुंडों की पार्टी है, वो सिर्फ गुंडागर्दी करते हैं।
आदमी को मिलता क्या है और सरकार जो हमसे इतना टैक्स लेती है उसके बदले में सरकार हमें देती क्या है? कौन सी ऐसी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सेवाएं, वर्ल्ड क्लास हेल्थ केयर, एजुकेशन, ट्रांसपोर्ट सुविधाएं सरकार बदले में देशवासी को देती है? मैं ये भी पूछना चाहता हूं। इसीलिए आज मुझे ये कहने में बिल्कुल भी गुरेज नहीं है दैट सर वी इन इंडिया टुडे पे टैक्सेस लाइक इंग्लैंड टू गेट सर्विसेज लाइक सोमालिया।
भारतीय जनता पार्टी एक ऐसी वॉशिंग मशीन है जो बिना डिटर्जेंट पाउडर के ही दमदार सफाई देती है। एक तरफ से कथाकथित भ्रष्टाचारी डालो और दूसरी तरफ से क्लीन चिट निकलती है। ये बीजेपी आज एक वॉशिंग मशीन बन गई है।
My subject is concern over impact of traffic congestion in Indian cities.
ये ब्लिंकिट वाले कहते हैं जी कोई दबाव ही नहीं है, हम तो कहते नहीं 10 मिनट में डिलीवर करो, वो तो स्टोर इतना पास है कि अपने आप हो जाती है। इन्होंने यूनिफॉर्म पे ही लिखा हुआ है।
He said, if I join politics, beat me up with chappals. I honestly have come to the conclusion that anti-defection law is a farce.
Why is it easy for ruling parties, in this case BJP, to abuse state machinery to kill the opposition?
हमने ये डिसाइड किया that we, the 2/3 members of parliament of the belonging to the Aam Aadmi Party in Rajya Sabha, exercise the provisions of the Constitution of India and merge ourselves with the BJP. हम BJP में विलय करते हैं।
What kind of politics is this?
Hello, sir.
Hello, Sharanya.
Sir, Raghav Chadha was seen criticizing BJP a lot of times in public, and he has also called BJP a lot of names, all sorts of names. Now he has joined the same party that he criticized once. Do you think such moves by politicians lead to them harming their own credibility?
Oh, there's no question about it. If you're not restrained when you're in office or in public life, if you don't look at things from all perspectives and then give a measured approach, then one day it will come to bite you. Let me give an example. Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, before he joined formally politics, party politics, he said, I'm sure some of you recall, some of you very young, he said, if I join politics, beat me up with chappals. So basically, he was trying to play to the galleries, the middle class revolution of politics. First of all, if you're a responsible citizen, it's a very dangerous approach. Our duty is to set right the wrong things in politics and make it productive for the people. If you reject politics and hate politics, you're not really serving the society. You're basically calling for an undemocratic solution. Already in India, because we don't believe in politicians, we give a lot of power to bureaucrats. We stop believing in bureaucrats, and therefore we give a lot of power to the judges. Increasingly, we stop believing in judges also. You see the criticism, quite often warranted. Now, where will you go to give the power? To the army? So, we don't realize, instead of improving the way the system works, this reckless rejection. Now, the moment you are so careless in your public utterances, disregarding truth or the larger picture, you lose credibility. So as a Raghav Chadha or somebody else in public office, you have absolutely every right and duty to criticize the government in office, to hold them to account. But you don't have to descend to a low level and use rhetoric which is unacceptable in public life or be unreasonable in your criticism, because then it will come to bite you. Therefore, quite deservedly, they get the blame now when they take actions like this. So my appeal is, I know a lot of Indians are very angry with politics and politicians. And all of us in FDR, we have been working very hard. We're all young people, but for about 30 years, we've been working to try and improve the nature of politics and the outcomes in politics in the service of the public. It's a very hard and long struggle. But if in that process we reject politics or hate politics, that's a terrible outcome. That's a terrible outcome. We require to have some degree of understanding of what citizenship is about, what politics is about, and focus on how to improve politics rather than hate politicians. This has hit me with redoubled vigor in the recent debate about the increasing the strength of the Lok Sabha. There was a bill introduced in Parliament by the government. No, merits and demerits apart, I was stunned at the ferocity of attack and anger on the part of many in the middle classes and youth at the idea of increasing the strength of Lok Sabha. And the argument they advanced is already there are 543 fellows who are corrupt, who are excessively, we are spending too much money on them. By increasing the number, we are only wasting more money. No, never do it. No, there are good reasons to either increase or not to increase the Lok Sabha strength. But that we are paying some salaries and allowances to them, and therefore that should not be incurred, is a terrible reason that we should reject that. That shows how angry we are and sometimes how self-destructive we are. Let's take the practical calculation. There are 25 million employees of government in this country. Union, states, public sector, etc. We are spending humongous sums on their salaries and allowances. However much we think we are spending on our elected representatives is peanuts. There are 4,000 plus legislators at the state level, and 543 plus another 250 or so in Rajya Sabha, maybe about 780 or 800 members of the parliament. They constitute an extremely small proportion of this number. Their total emoluments are an insignificant portion of the public expenditure in the country. It makes no difference. A state like Himachal recently, they said that the MLAs and the ministers' salaries, they curtail the salaries. Senior officials, they will defer the increases in salary and so on and so forth. It has no impact on the public purse. It has an impact in terms of setting an example, sending a signal, preparing the society and the people for certain sacrifices because there is a serious crunch in the public finances. But in terms of money, it's irrelevant. So we are so angry with them, we are making the money that is paid to MLAs and MPs for their representative work as the central issue. And let me assure you, in general, I can say without any fear of contradiction, but 95% of the MLAs and MPs, the salary they get is peanuts. It's irrelevant. When in a state like Andhra Pradesh and Telangana or Karnataka or Tamil Nadu, an MLA in most cases is spending 30 to 40 crores to be elected. And the person defeated also spent that much money, remember. That doesn't guarantee victory. That's the kind of investment that is required to contest, to compete strongly, to have a realistic chance of success. You're talking about 2 lakh rupees, 3 lakhs rupees a month and a 40 crore investment. Just look at the numbers. The crisis is altogether different. The crisis is the right kind of people are not ascending. If they do ascend occasionally, it's not by the right means, not by the rational means and ethical means, and they're not able to provide adequate alternatives to the people. They're not able to deliver and generate the outcomes that we require once they ascend to office. How to address that is a challenge, not painting everybody with a broad brush and hating politicians. And that's why Raghav Chadha doing what he did, undermining legitimacy, or Arvind Kejriwal basically saying politics is all terrible. If I enter politics, please beat me up and then join politics. These are unthinking statements playing to the galleries, and ultimately you end up undermining democracy.
Sir, because you raised the issue of the middle classes, let's talk about a couple of issues that Mr. Raghav Chadha raised in the parliament. He raised issues on gig workers' rights, on expensive food at airports, consumer rights and food safety standards, and traffic congestion in Indian cities. These are predominantly the issues that touch the middle classes. Increasing.
No, some of them are very legitimate, larger issues like traffic congestion in cities. I wouldn't say it's a middle class issue. It's an issue affecting every single citizen in a city.
Right.
Hyderabad city, for instance, statistics show that something like 122 hours of precious time during working hours are lost per capita per year. So every one of us, the poorest and the richest, is affected. So some of them are genuine. Some, of course, a little play into the galleries.
Correct.
I can understand. But some of them are legitimate, genuine issues that deserve to be seriously addressed.
Right. But increasingly we feel that we as middle classes feel that we've been deceived by our elected representatives, that our voices are not being heard. Why do you think that is?
It's a great question. There is a tremendous disjunction between the people and those who are in authority are not merely politicians.
Okay.
Bureaucracy.
Hmm.
The real thing is not even politics. I know what I say is unfashionable. But trust me, if you take politicians and bureaucrats as two classes of people that determine our fates, our collective fates, because they are the ones who deliver the services, who spend public money, apply the principles of law, and execute the laws and policies. Politician, however bad the person appears, because they abuse each other, they appear to be terrible to us. However bad they abuse each other, they have an incredibly difficult task. And there are serious compulsions, sometimes when they subvert the process of law. But the real damage is done by the bureaucracy. You know, the famous television serial and books, S Minister and S Prime Minister in Britain, they're all about a politician elected to office with the promise of change. That's the mandate derived from the people, promising, offering change. And the bureaucrat standing firm to preserve status quo without allowing change to happen. While it was humorous, the central dilemma is not entirely unreal. There are wonderful public servants. There are wonderful bureaucrats who serve the society remarkably well. I'm talking of bureaucracy as a class, not about individuals. So bureaucracy as a class is not responding to the challenges and wishes of the people. Bureaucracy does not see itself as the servant of the public. Because of the asymmetry of power in our country, 90% of the poor or 90% of the people of India are weaker and poorer and less influential than an average, not senior civil servants, not officers and IAS and IPS, etc. I'm talking about an average ordinary government employee, economically, in terms of organizational power, in terms of access to influence, and in terms of job security for life. So given that, and given the fact that we failed to fashion bureaucracy as an instrument to deliver effectively, almost nothing gets delivered. Once that happens, people are disenchanted. Every election, including you and I, and the poor much more so, with enormous hope and anticipation that they're going to be delivered out of the crisis they face every day. People vote. They imagine the excitement in this country. No other country has such noisy elections, such excitement in elections. And first past the post systems in the world, no country sees greater polling percentages. Not only with this 80s, 90s, with removing some of the inflated numbers in the electoral rolls after SIR, etc. Even earlier, we were getting 75-80% quite often percentages, particularly in the state elections, because state is the unit of politics, not the national level for the people. So people vote with great anticipation, excitement in an illiterate and poor country. And yet, each time they're disappointed. Almost nothing substantive, which is enhancing the collective good, is promoted or furthered in most cases. At best, a few projects now, a few mission mode things. And of late, good things are happening, like infrastructure is improving, etc. But in general, the steady work required to improve delivery of school education, of healthcare, or rule of law, to promote rule of law and give everybody access to the protection of justice system in the country, and basic infrastructure, or basic amenities, like drinking water in Hyderabad, the traffic management in the city, or something else. All of us feel the anger, and the poor feel much more so. The middle classes feel strongly because they're conscious of the taxes they're paying. In India, out of the vast population, only about a small number pay actually income tax of a significant measure. We are a very unusual country where about 4.5 times the per capita income is more or less exempt from income tax. No other country has such a very high floor for the income tax. And therefore, while they're paying taxes, indirect taxes mostly, there is no consciousness that they're paying out of their pocket. The middle classes, because they're paying the income tax checks, there is this awareness. Therefore, they're even more angry. But the real issue is not politics. Politics has failed to the extent that they fail to reshape the bureaucracy as an instrument of delivery. But the primary failing is not that of political class. It is the bureaucratic class. And the primary failing of politicians is not being able to hold the bureaucracy to account to make it an effective instrument in the service of the people.
sir, like we discussed, Raghav Chadda's case has made the news, but it's hardly the first case of defection. There have been so many cases and they always make the news. And so I have two questions. One, why do you feel the anti-defection law has failed? And second, given what you just said about how the real problem in politics is not the politicians but the bureaucrats, do you feel that such a law like the anti-defection law is even necessary?
I honestly have come to the conclusion that anti-defection law is a farce. It has done immense damage to the country. One, specifically, in terms of the inaction of the parliament or state legislatures, mostly parliament. State legislatures really not much of policy is being debated or discussed in states anyway. Take, for instance, the Muslim Women's Bill. Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, well-intentioned though he was scared by the backlash from the Muslim clergy, the orthodox Muslim clergy, when a very low level of maintenance allowance was allowed by the Supreme Court to a divorcee in Muslim community, Shabano. All the Muslim intellectuals, thinkers, politicians, leaders advised the government not to go for that bill to undo the Supreme Court verdict, basically undermining the women's rights. And yet he was scared sufficiently to go ahead with the law. Most Congress MPs were opposed to that. But because of the fear of anti-defection law, by the time 52nd Amendment and 10th Schedule were in place, they did not dare to vote against that. A few people who did not like it, they had to quit public life. Arif Muhammad Khan had to resign. He was a minister, a very ranking Muslim minister. He resigned. Many intellectuals, I remember Abid Hussain, many others, they very strongly argued that we must modernize the community. We must not allow the orthodoxy of the clergy to dominate the society. But it was lost. And in order to overcompensate for what the Prime Minister had done or the government had done, they then opened the locks of Babri Masjid. Since independence, more or less, until 1980s, for 40 years almost, the Babri Masjid gates were locked under someone section 145, whatever, some property dispute, and under CRPC, the local magistrate gave orders. That was opened at the government's behest. The Home Minister of India at that time went to preside over the Kar Seva for the temple. The Prime Minister of India launched the election campaign in 1989 from Ayodhya. Many people think it's BJP that created the Ayodhya Ram Mandir movement. It was the Congress that initiated as a response to their failure to do what was right in case of Shabano case. It was all necessary because of the anti-defection law. Similarly, Justice Ramaswamy, PV Narasimha Rao government, it was a case where the parliament was about to take a final call to remove a judge of the Supreme Court. A panel of brother judges, like a panel of peers, actually has investigated and then came to a conclusion that there was malfeasance and therefore the judge should be removed. That was the recommendation. Supreme Court, on the one occasion when they should have come to the parliament, on the one occasion they should have come together, they failed to do so, and the Prime Minister used the whip, preventing Congress members from voting. And therefore that motion failed. And judicial accountability forever took a hit. We never in India's history, removed a single High Court or Supreme Court judge through parliamentary procedure. And you've seen what happened over the years. I can cite many, many such instances. So anti-defection law did immense damage in terms of the actual outcome in legislation. One. Two, what is the negative consequence of that? With all imperfections of members of parliament and in several cases legislature have the capacity to actually make out a case, debate very soundly. On a few occasions when the governments of the day allowed a genuine debate, take for instance the GST bill, constitutional amendment, take the Lokpal bill, one during NDA time, another during UPA time. They were masterly debates. We all blame politicians for many things that are wrong. We question their competence. These two are great instances of masterly debate in parliament, in no way inferior to anything anywhere else in the world. They are capable, even with the dilution of the standards of the members of parliament and state legislature. But 99% of the occasions, there's absolutely no voice for the legislator. How completely frustrated they are, you have to understand. Doesn't matter which party. It may be Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi, it may be BJP is the national level parliament, it may be TDP in Andhra Pradesh, it may be TRS or BRS or Congress in Telangana or Karnataka or some other state, doesn't matter. A legislator is actually not allowed to do his main duty of legislating, of being a member of the legislature. He is there notionally, and he is only there in order to raise his hand in support of the chief minister, because after all the constitution says the government is responsible to the legislative majority in the lower house. And whenever a vote is there, a rare occasion when a vote is called, your duty is to simply follow the boss's diktats. Otherwise, you have zero role in the legislature, not to hold the government to account. And the few proceedings in the government are shor machana, shouting, tearing up the papers, going into the well, and walking out. There is no parliamentary debate. This tendency has dramatically been aggravated after the anti-defection law. A member's voice is no longer heard. The only time a member is heard is 0 hour. You get a minute's time or so to make one point briefly. The government is not obligated to respond also. They're supposed to take note, and that's the end of the story. You hope that if it's important enough issue, media will take notice and somebody will pay attention, but that's about it. A legislature is elected by us. That's a sovereign house. The person represents the whole state or the whole country, depending on which legislature it is. You made him irrelevant. Anti-defection law made it totally irrelevant, because the price you pay is extraordinary, that you give up the legislative office. So what it did was, it only discouraged people from moving from ruling party to opposition. As a general rule, you take all over the country, the anti-defection law's only success was, once ruling party had a clear majority, generally you don't lose majority. But from opposition to ruling party, there's absolutely no problem. It's a one-way door. Because the speaker is your man. By definition, if you have a majority party's speaker is there, and the speaker does your bidding. And speakers are no longer independent members. They are no longer GV Maulonkars. They are no longer, they're not like speakers of House of Commons. So anti-defection law made our legislatures utterly dysfunctional. And remember, these are the only people elected to public office in this country. All our democracy rests on this pillar of legislator, state or national. They are the only ones who are deriving sovereignty from us, the people, from our will. When you make them irrelevant, then you emasculate them. You made actually democracy a farce. Our anger against legislators must not really make democracy a farce. You cannot have democracy and then make it a farce. You cannot have democracy and then have so much of contempt for legislators. The challenge is, how do you make legislators better? How do you ensure entry of a better class of people? Ensure their elevation through better class of behavior? And how to get better outcomes? Not how to destroy them, how to give them galis, how to make them irrelevant. That's a very dangerous thing. So anti-defection law has not served any purpose at all. I think it should go. At the very least, if it, for whatever reason in India, we somehow think leaving a party is like, leaving a religion. It's ultimate sin. Somehow it's a very, that's the imagery that some people spout, which is nonsensical, frankly. Political party is simply a forum for political participation of people, to articulate the views of and aspirations of the public, and to build a social coalition around politics. It has no greater moral sanctity than that. We put it on a pedestal without making political parties accountable to people. And therefore, if they still want the anti-defection law to continue, at the very least, do two things. One, limit the provisions of anti-defection law only to situations when a government might fall, and that is no confidence motion or confidence motion, and budget. And two, and that means no upper house, no anti-defection law in the upper house. The upper house cannot bring down a government or pass the budget. And two, the person to enforce the provisions of the law should not be the speaker, because those days are gone when the speaker will be impartial, presiding over the house, protecting democracy. Let's not kid ourselves. Election Commission is entrusted with the authority and the responsibility to advise the president or the governor, as the case may be, when for other reasons a disqualification petition is pending against a legislator. And the president or the governor is duty bound to simply follow the Election Commission's recommendation. Give the exact provision. So in the few occasions when it is warranted, let the Election Commission say there's a defection or no defection. Don't allow the speakers to say that.
Sir, among the criticism that Mr. Raghav Chadha was, giving against the BJP, one of the things that he mentioned was the BJP, the ruling party, was the washing machine. Now, why is it easy for ruling parties, in this case BJP, to abuse state machinery to kill the opposition? Because that's a legitimate allegation that the opposition raised.
This is sadly, this has been the failing of our democracy for a long time. While normatively there is rule of law in India, what are the two elements of rule of law? That everybody is equal before law. They enjoy the equal protection of law. And two, nobody is above the law. No matter how high you are, the law is above you. You may be Supreme Court Chief Justice, you may be the Prime Minister or President, you may be the Speaker of the House, you may be anything, but the law is above you. In reality, in India, in practical terms, that's not true. Neither of these is true. Law does not apply equally, and justice system is simply not capable of addressing the challenges. If you are a wrongdoer, you have no fear of punishment. And if you maintain honesty and integrity, there is no protection available within the system, in general speaking. I'm being very broad in my comments, and we all know that. In such a situation, abuse of power by those in authority has become endemic. Because after all, the crime investigative agencies, which are supposed to investigate an offense and be impartial in rendering justice and above board and treat everybody equal, they are entirely controlled by you, the executive branch of government. And remember, 95% of crime investigation in India is in the states. We are not like the United States, where there are certain federal crimes and therefore Federal Investigative Agency, FBI, is there. And states have state offenses and state laws. In India, whatever be the law, it is the state police that are the custodians of law and order. And therefore, they are the ones who actually investigate. Only a few select cases, like money laundering, etc., there is a direct power of the union investigative agencies. In the states, it's habitual. It's very habitual that the police are under the thumb of the local legislator and the minister, and the chief minister is very well known almost all over the country. In the union, because it's very small number of cases, fairly or serious criminal cases investigated by the union, unless the states actually transfer the subject to the union, or occasionally courts transfer them to the CBI or something. Everything is done at the state level. The selective prosecution is clearly evident in case of some of these offenses. It is not that the people who are prosecuted are all lily white and pure. It is that there is selective application of law in respect of political opponents, and you're shielding the people who are in favor of the party in power, and therefore the idea of washing machine. If you're not with opposition, then you're besmirched with the investigation. If the ruling party, the cases somehow vanish suddenly. It's not new, but it's much more pronounced in recent times because of the ability to selectively prosecute at the national level, because these laws also have come somewhat recently, only about a decade or more ago. Money Laundering Act, that became probably the favorite pastime now. And in a country with phenomenal corruption, money laundering is endemic. If you spend 40 crores for assembly election, how is the 40 crores generated? It's not legitimate expenditure by check. It's neither legitimate nor accounted. It's by definition cash expenditure, and illegitimate because you're doing for vote buying, etc. It's not for campaigning. So by definition, there has to be money laundering. Corruption money, or money being routed for these purposes, has to be by money laundering. And despite our best efforts, for instance, when the demonetization was attempted, from FDR we passionately argued, now that you took a first step, true, the way it was done was bad. They didn't even take minimum steps to make sure that the currency is available to replace the currency that is suddenly demonetized. They used to put the money in. That's operational detail. But now that they had taken the step, supposing in real estate they removed the black money. The cash transactions are common in real estate in this country, because even if you want to honestly give by check, the seller is not accepting a check. And even if you want to sell only by check, the buyer does not want to pay by check, because The buyer is now saddled with taxation in the form of stamp duty, etc. They want to evade the 7-8% stamp duty. And a large transaction that comes to a very tidy sum. The seller wants to evade the capital gains tax. So both have an incentive. So the people who have no cash to spare or who don't want to deal in cash, they're edged out of the market. Supposing the states and the union come together, they bring down the stamp duty, they bring down the capital gains tax, and enhance the official guidance value of the land to roughly reflect the market value, because that keeps changing every day. You can't have an exact value, but somewhere near that, 75-80%, as opposed to the current practice in many cities. Then there are three benefits accruing automatically. The buyer and the seller don't have to indulge in cash. The government does not lose revenue, because the land value is now reflecting the real value, and therefore the tax money will go, tax rate will come down. The cash is not required. The government does not lose revenue. The buyer and seller will not have to pay more taxes. It's win-win-win for everybody. It's lose-lose-lose only for the people who have a lot of black money parked somewhere.
Right.
Essentially, it's a function of corruption. And that's why money laundering provisions became necessary. Instead of addressing the root cause, we strengthen the money laundering law. In a manner that is, I'm told, I'm not an expert on this subject, but Supreme Court and the courts repeatedly held that no, draconian provisions are possible. You can arrest them, put them behind bars for some considerable amount of time in the name of money laundering, because we have quite rightly aversion to money laundering. But without addressing the root cause, it's not helping. But it's giving immense opportunity to the investigative agencies and their masters to selectively prosecute and persecute. And this obviously is for political ends. So go to the roots of it. If you want to address money laundering, please remove the need for black money. And it's possible. But that also necessitates cleaning up politics. Maybe it's a good thing to force the political system to clean up. Any system that depends on 30-40 crores unaccounted money spent illegitimately for any kind of electoral activity is a dysfunctional and corrupt system by definition. And that's what's happening in large parts of India. If you don't acknowledge it, if you make it a fight between two political parties or candidates or ministers and MLAs and MPs or politicians versus the society, it will be extremely foolhardy. You must address the real challenges.
So, in the current setup, as you had mentioned earlier, legislators have been made irrelevant. So, in this situation, whom do you feel an elected representative belongs to, the party or the people? And in an ideal situation, whom should they belong to?
The representative is people's representative. While representative is voted by the constituency voters, the representative is for the whole state or the country. If you're in Lok Sabha, for the whole country. If you're in the state assembly, you represent the whole state. Certainly, you give greater voice to your own constituents, but you are not an advocate for your constituency. You are a representative in the legislative assembly of the state or the Lok Sabha of India. But what happened over time is they have become merely uncrowned kings of the constituency, particularly MLAs. Now let's limit our discussion to MLAs, because that is, as I said, the unit of politics. The Lok Sabha constituency is nothing but an aggregate of assemblies. There is no real politics in Lok Sabha constituency. Real politics in much of India is at the state assembly constituency. No, the MLA has become the uncrowned king of the constituency. He is no longer a representative in the assembly. He is no longer holding the government to account. Who is no longer ensuring good budgets and sensible laws. None of these things. These are all perfunctory. On paper, they are there. I don't think any serious legislator even goes through the budget in detail. Some bit here, some bit there. And even the debates on budget are perfunctory. Very, very predictable, without any depth, because there's no purpose behind that. But what is the real power? In the constituency, contracts, land and mining, police cases and crime investigation, almost any act of patronage by the state, all the welfare schemes, everything is mandated by the MLA. And of course, most important, transfers and postings of employees. So that is the real power of the MLA. And even we judge MLA not by his or her functioning as a legislator. Even the better class of people, they judge them by how the MLA lads or MP lads' money is spent by them. That's an executive function. It's become so dysfunctional now that we actually say, see, you got 2 crores to spend, you didn't spend it properly or didn't spend it wisely. There's an and sadly, a situation has now come that a good class of legislators, they have to now depend on this at least to do some good things. Otherwise, the system has no longer the capacity to deliver. So the fine legislators actually are using this money to do the right things and get some appreciation. And of course, a bulk of them, because they already invested a lot of money in politics, there's a standard 15-20% cut. It's widely known. I mean, I'm not stating any state secret. MP lads, MLA lads, all right, you want the scheme for a good project? Take it, 1 crore, all right, give me my cut. So you can see how dysfunctional the system is.
So isn't that what politics is about? Power, winning elections, criticizing the opposite party,
Money.
money.
No, but remember, let's not be too cynical. I know power has a tendency to be abused. And I know absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But democratic power is supposed to be neither absolute nor cynical. It is to reflect the people's aspirations. We, the people, have all the power over ourselves. A part of that power, for the time being, we transfer to somebody. It's our power, remember. They're not the principals. We are the principals. We transfer to somebody to make laws on our behalf, to hold the government to account on our behalf, and to ventilate our voices on our behalf. That's the only limited thing. Instead, because of very imperfect democracy, inadequately designed, very poorly designed, reducing it to only vote and shout. Our democracy essentially has these 2 components. We vote with great gusto and celebration and noise, intense political competition. The heat of elections in India is phenomenal. No other country witnesses so much of noise and celebration. And once they are elected to office, from next day onwards, we say istifa do, resign, protest, rasta roko, band. These are the 2 elements of our democracy. That's not enough for a democracy. A democracy must have systems of accountability. Democracy must have systems of ability to deliver. It must bring in the synergies between the vote and consequences. I must know what the consequences of my vote are as citizen. It must bring in the link between the taxes and the services. And it must bring authority closer to accountability. But because politics largely failed to perform the central functions in our country, it's only reduced to who is the new monarch. So your point is right. When we elect, the bulk of the people of India, they think that we're electing the next monarch. By some miracle, we don't understand the decision to put the monarch there is ours through what is that little is a ballot paper in the ballot paper days, or the pressing of the button, the right button or wrong button, whatever we press. So, but he's still the monarch. In our imagination, that monarch is untrammeled by any constraints. He must do our bidding. He must help us out. No, that is not democracy. That is a very dysfunction. That's the very definition of dysfunctionality. There are 3 central functions of a democracy. The reason why we have representative democracy is it's impractical for us to sit together and decide on every issue. We have neither the time and energy nor the capacity. Most people don't know most things of what's happening around the world. We cannot burden them, and they're already busy with the concerns of their lives. And therefore, we have representative democracy. The representatives have 3 central tasks. The first task in governance is the money is always limited. The wants are always unlimited. That's true with human life. That's true with the company, but particularly true with the public purse. Because you give tax money, or somebody borrows money on our behalf, there can't be unlimited borrowing. If you can borrow unlimited and then everything is okay, where is the problem in life? Nobody has a problem. If you can print currency, where is the problem in life? The problem in life is you cannot print currency as you please. You cannot borrow unlimited. There is a limited resource available. But our wants are unlimited. Our desires and dreams are unlimited. The politician has a difficult choice of deciding what is necessary at a point of time. And that's always an unpopular task. If our parents decide, look, this is the money available, you have all these dreams, but I can't fulfill all these dreams, I want to do this. At that moment, we dislike them. Parents, at least, they're our parents, they're genes, and we depend on them, we love them, they love us. It's understandable, therefore they can reconcile. What is the great love between us and our government? It's a much harder task. The second most important task is, if you are a voter, I obviously want to please you today because I want your vote again. But if I care for this society, I must take care of the next generation. 25 years later, what happens? If I please you because you are the voter today, but I destroy your future and children's future, that's a disaster. Again, in a family, supposing parents borrow recklessly for day-to-day expenditure to please the children that day, to give them all that they want without any restraint, but tomorrow the children are doomed. There is a debt without an asset. The family is deeply in debt and bankrupt, and they disappear. What do we think of those parents? They're a disaster. Now, increasingly, we are forcing the system in that direction because the political system is not performing its function of protecting the future while taking care of the current needs. You cannot destroy the future while taking care of the current needs. You cannot satisfy the voter today at the cost of the children tomorrow. The second function, that is. The third function is we are a very diverse society. There is no country probably on earth which is as diverse as we are: language, religion, region, caste, subcaste, and sometimes even ideas. Even if otherwise everything else is somewhat homogeneous, ideas. Somebody has to reconcile. You have one point of view, Swayambhu has another point of view, Saranya has another point of view, and we have to carry everybody and then reconcile these conflicting views and interests. These are the three functions of politics. I would say the third one, the political system is performing okay, gets pass marks. In an extremely complex country, we cannot blame the political system for that failure. By and large, I'm not giving them 100 marks, but by and large, they have really held the society together. But the first two functions have been a disaster. They have been a disaster. So unless we look at it deeply and figure out what needs to be done to make it possible for a politician to reconcile the limited resources with unlimited wants, and to reconcile satisfying the voter today, it's necessary. We have to keep the society going. You have to keep them at peace. If people are perpetual in war path, you cannot run a country. But if pleasing the electorate today is the only concern, if tomorrow is doomed, then there's no country left. So how do you reconcile it? These two functions, they must be compatible with political survival. We must design institutions like that. We fail to do that. And therefore, even a politician, while we are angry with them, they are desperate. Politicians too, many politicians are well-meaning. And they could probably earn more money investing the same amount as in politics. In a growing economy outside, they could probably earn the same money or more. It is the desire to be appreciated, desire to exercise leadership, and the Indian lure of, being relevant, recognized, that is making them go into politics at enormous cost. So blaming them and abusing them is not a solution. How do you attract a better class of politicians? How do you make them function better? How do you make it possible for them to function better? These are the questions you should ask.
Sir, why are parties a leader-centric or a family-centric now in India? And is there no way a new capable face can emerge in politics right now?
We committed a mistake in the design itself. We must go into the origins of our nationhood in a modern sense. The Congress movement, particularly under Mahatma Gandhi, was an extraordinary movement, unlike anything else in the world. Men and women of great stature, intelligence, a sense of public good, and sacrifice, personal sacrifice for public good. They all came together across the vast country with enormous diversity of all kinds of people: upper caste, lower caste, north, south, Hindi, non-Hindi, Hindu, Muslim, all kinds of people, all languages, they came together. I don't think there's another country on earth which saw the rise of such a galaxy of leaders of exceptional quality as India has seen during that period. That was the greatest strength. That's what really allowed the diversity to come together and to build a nation in the modern sense. But probably those great leaders also were somewhat complacent, thinking that the future will always be exactly like that. the next generation leaders will behave the same way as they were behaving. They did not realize that the extraordinary set of circumstances of fighting a foreign ruler, particularly when there's a racial element involved, the white versus brown and black. So it's easy to unite and to get very excited and to be very inspired and all that. But in day-to-day governance, it's not poetry, it's prose. It's very difficult to be inspired on a day-to-day basis in perpetuity. You have to build instruments of accountability effectively. They assume that everybody would have the same sense of sacrifice, same sense of public good, will be honest to the core, and the right kind of people with the right motives will enter public life. That was their assumption. So they did not bother to build an institutional framework to make political parties look better. Now, parties have four central functions. Parties have to attract the best talent in society, the most public spirited citizens, not only talented but public spirited citizens who are on the lookout for the collective good. You must attract them to public work. Otherwise, each of us takes care of our own family, our own business, profession, life. I'm entitled to live my life, right? But you must create a framework in which these best people, best in the sense of talent and the sense of public good, are attracted to public life. Second, you must allow their rise to power through ethical and rational means. Ethical means obviously honesty, that you don't bribe the voters, you don't do many obvious things. Rational is even more important. Remember earlier we were discussing today's good versus tomorrow's outcome. Supposing you are offering something wonderful to voters today, but the cost of tomorrow is not rational. Supposing you are dividing society and caste or religion, it's not rational. You may get the votes today, but you are breaking up society. So ethical and rational. Have we designed a system to ensure political success without compromising on ethical and rational principles? The third is, are you offering an alternative choices to the people? Not only as human beings, as leaders, as faces, but ideas and programs and policies and projects. And finally, are we capable of delivering on the promise once the verdict is given by the people? These are the four yardsticks. On the first and second, we spectacularly failed. Attracting the finest talent and allowing their rise to power through ethical and rational means, our failure is near total. And the third, offering alternatives were passable, maybe 30-40%. And the fourth, again, 30-40%. This is my estimate of our success or failure as political parties. Now, one of the key things that could have been and should have been and even now should be done is, political parties are not private estates. They are not government. But the moment a political party is seeking your vote, what is the difference between a political party and any other organization? There are many social organizations. The moment you seek the vote, you seek power through the vote, you are a political party. And by seeking power, you are seeking control over the tax money, the public purse, and control over making legislation and making policy. Once the party is self-declared, because that's what a party is about, once you want to do this, you must be treated for that limited purpose as a public organization. Therefore, the way you conduct yourself is not your private business. It must be democratic. It must be accountable. It must be transparent. For instance, Germany, when the Basic Law was created after the end of Second World War, they introduced an article or section 21 in the Basic Law. They understood the importance of political parties. After the Nazi Party, the National Socialism, were a law unto themselves. They were unaccountable to the public. They were non-transparent. And they realized that's one of the problems that ended up in Nazism and the fascism and so on and so forth. And therefore, the Constitution says the political party and political mobilization has to be on democratic lines. Membership, leadership choice, candidate selection, fund utilization must be transparent and must be regulated by laws. So we should do something like that. Have a framework law which ensures that a party cannot function as a private estate. Today, Indian political party, in the large part, most of them are family estates, private fiefdoms. They are treated as private property practically. It's unthinkable that you go against the leader. And people also think it's legitimate. People think that which are a leader, it's leader's party. We don't realize it's our party, that we are the principals. Somebody is a leader because we wanted somebody to be a leader. Whatever be the imperfections of, let's say, Donald Trump, and we all love to hate him for good reasons. But remember, he or anybody else in America, for instance, rose to power not because of pedigree. They were elected by the members of their political party to be their candidates. Barack Obama was a relatively unknown person, but he became the leader of the country not by pedigree or money or caste, but because the members of the party felt that he was their best choice. In our country, do you have this framework? If you have 40 crores money to contest, if you are loyal to the high command, not to the country, not to the people, if you belong to the right caste, and if you yourself have a pedigree or the son of so and so, that's the fourth qualification, then you're guaranteed. If these four are not there, if all four are not there, no matter how exceptional you are, how competent you are, how public spirited you are, what your record is, your chances of political entry and success are slim, if not nothing. That's not right. So we created a structure where political parties have all the power without any accountability.
Sir, let's say if and when the increase in seats in the parliament happens from 543 to 816 or whatever that number is, how do we ensure that the increase in these seats, young people, good people come into politics?
No, without political parties' internal democracy, particularly in the choice of the leader and the choice of the candidate, through secret ballot. Now, I no longer trust any process other than secret ballot. It's going to be messy initially. Any disruption of the existing system is going to be messy, but some disruption is, I think, desirable. Unless that is institutionalized. For some time, when Mr. Rahul Gandhi started the practice of election in youth congress, etc., I had some hope. It was very quickly given up. That should have been persisted. And when the party election was held for the party president, when somebody who did not seek or get their blessing was the candidate, Shashi Tharoor, I think it's not a secret anymore to anybody. Actively and consciously, the quote-unquote unelected high command made their preference known, and the people were so slavish, the members. They voted for whomever the high command wanted. That is not internal democracy. If only that opportunity was utilized fully, it would have been a great example to the country. Today, some parties, left parties, increasingly, unfortunately, they lost the political footprint for a variety of reasons, but they were somewhat democratic. Not entirely democracy, the kind that we understand, but within the contours of communist parties functioning, it was somewhat democratic. To some extent, BJP is somewhat democratic in the sense that it's not the pedigree and it's not the money that makes you a candidate always, and you can rise in position in the party by hard work and by merit, but not really democratic because there's no real secret ballot. And so unless parties move in that direction, membership is my choice. I, as a citizen of India, can choose my political platform. Leadership is the member's choice. And candidate is the constituency members or their elected members' choice. It cannot be foisted by the top bosses. You have influence, certainly as a party leader, you would have influence. Nobody is denying you that influence, but you cannot have a decisive role. Until we come to that situation, we cannot salvage our democracy. But for that to happen, we also have to have electoral reform where you don't have to spend 40, 50 crores to contest elections, because that determines everything else. So one and the other, they probably have to go in tandem.
So you mentioned that the legislator is now become the uncrowned king of the constituency.
This guy is the executive. He's not a legislator.
Right.
No legislator, and even people do not think that he's a legislator. People also think he's the king of the constituency. We treat him as such. Even you and I, when there's a problem in the constituency, I am talking to the MLA. Why? Because the reality of power is such that he decides, including some civil dispute locally, including a police case, including something else. This is a dysfunctional system.
How do we move away from that?
First, make legislatures function as legislatures. among other things, it also requires a very strong committee system where the executive branch of government is really accountable to legislature.
Right.
Constitutionally, in our system of government, it's the legislature that is the mother of the government. In reality, once you command a majority in the legislature is a slave of the executive. You created the executive is accountable to you, that's a theory. But the reality is, you are entirely under the control of the executive, and the executive is the master. That's not what is intended. So that's one part. But the second part is make local governments effective, because without creating a mechanism to actually deliver for the people look up to legislator. Street lighting is not there. There's a few local fuse call problem. You know where the first call goes? Legislator. One day, one very prominent, very powerful legislator, he told me there was shortage of water. So, as usual, government sent some tankers there in that village, a small town or whatever. And then people were queuing up with their vessels to fill. One chap was 10th in the line. He rang up the MLA and said, "Can you put me front in the line?" A real story. So, when you have innervated the local governments, made them irrelevant, when there's no local accountability, when there's no ability to exercise your lung power, your voice, and make the local government deliver, and legislator then is the only person, because he's the only person who came to me for the vote, and it depends on me on the vote again, for the vote again. So, you know, we all hate our legislators for good reasons. The politicians are functioning in an obnoxious manner oftentimes, but we would slightly different for the sin of wanting to be a representative of the people, for the sin of wanting to contest elections and be known in that area. The poor chap is burdened with things which are beyond his control. And the anger people exhibit is unbelievable. If you go to the people at the grassroots level, they don't know what is wrong. They know many things are wrong. And the one person they can blame is the legislator, because he has to come back for the vote and he cannot lash out with you. And therefore, they put all the burden on the person. And sometimes intolerable burden. Half the time of legislators goes towards attending weddings. One legislator one day told me, "Sir, this is the 30th wedding I'm attending today." Today.
Today.
So, you know, it's a monstrosity. Legislators are human beings too. Yes, we revile them. We love to hate them. Films make them, big red films make them the villains. But this is a very vital function in a democracy. It's a critical function. Instead of hating people and being envious, we must look at what is the best way to get delivery out of the system. How do you design it? So if we make local government effective, and our local governments are the weakest in the world, they're the weakest in the world. Just to give an example, China is an authoritarian country, single party. If anybody protests, anything can happen, including chopping off, right? We have seen Tiananmen Square and other places. But Chinese local governments, they spend 51% of the total government expenditure at the local level by the local governments. In democratic India, with all our constitutionalism, multi-party democracy, and noisy, vibrant elections, local governments spend 3% of the money. They have near zero power. Ours is the lowest in the world. No country is lower than 3% in local governments, where local governments exist. China is the highest in the world. Now, what is democracy? If for everything, from your local tap to local drain to local road, everything is centralized, and you don't know whom to go to. Government is something that you don't understand. Sometimes ministers say, no, government has to do it. We don't know government. As if government is something different. They are the ministers. Because we made it something impenetrable, something impossible to understand. That's not the way. It must be localized. Most functions that can be delivered locally must be localized. Local accountability must be there. Local capacity to deliver must be there. We destroyed them. We have to bring that back.
Right, sir. Thank you for sharing your perspectives today.